The following podcast contains explicit language. You're listening to the Cinematography Podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image and the people who make it happen. Coming to you from the world headquarters of Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California, are your hosts, Ben Rock and Ilya Friedman.
Hey, it's a special episode of the Cinematography Podcast. Today we have an interview with the team behind the Truffle Hunters, currently in theaters, and they just won an award at the American Society of Cinematographers 2021 Awards for documentary category. And so congratulations to Michael Dweck and Gregory Kershaw for putting together a beautiful, beautiful movie that if you haven't seen, you could totally go see, perhaps in a very empty movie theater right now, or probably soon coming to streaming, courtesy of Sony Picture Classics. And without further ado, here's my interview with the team behind the Truffle Hunters from Sundance 2020 that you might have heard in a compilation episode, but here it is again, worthy of listening, worthy of seeing. Enjoy.
The Cinematography Podcast interview.
Michael, Gregory from the Truffle Hunters, thank you so much for being on the Cinematography Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So gentlemen, amazing documentary. I mean, really, really wonderful to watch and beautiful, beautiful images. People talk a lot about young man sports, like, oh man, that's a young man sport. Clearly, the artisanal Alba white Truffle Hunters, this is not a young man sport. This is an old man sport. And you give us a little window into this world that is typically completely unknown, heretofore unknown, which is a remarkable accomplishment. Can you talk about a little bit how this came to be, how this all came together?
Well, the project kind of came to us in August 2017. We were both happened to be in the Piedmont region of Italy separately on little family vacations just to get away from our last film, which was edited in Copenhagen. And we're in this tiny little village, maybe of 60 families. And we started to hear stories about these old men in the woods at night, these truffle hunters that no one's ever seen. And, the more we snooped around, the more we found that this could be a possible great story because, at one point we were in a bar and, on the wall was all these handwritten in pencil accounting ledgers. It went from 1941 and it said truffle, how big it was, and then it said how much the price was, and then it went all the way to current. And we asked the bar owner, so what is this? He said, well, I want a truffle. I put 50 euros in that little box outside, and when I come in the morning, there's a truffle in the box. And we said, where does it come from? He said, Psst. So that, then the two of us went back and spent weeks there trying to dig into this place and see if we can find the elusive truffle hunters. And but it took us about a year to find out who these people really were.
Everything about this world is secret. Where they sell the truffles, it all takes place in black markets, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Besides the church.
Besides the church. I mean, the whole where you find the truffles is secret. People have these elaborate maps. The truffle hunters have these elaborate maps of where they find truffles every year, and they keep the exact location, the exact date, where the moon was at that particular point.
Humidity, yeah.
And they guard these things. I mean, they're prized possessions. They won't share it with their best friend, and they won't share it with their children. It's
deepest secrets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing is that we realized when we met the truffle hunters, we asked them, why is it you that can find these things and nobody else? And each one had their own hypothesis. One said, well, I go 3 days after lightning strikes.
Oh, wow.
Another one said, well, we consult with water diviners, and we spent quite a bit of time with water diviners because they said the truffle gives off an energy that other funguses don't. And it worked. I mean, believe it or not, it worked.
Wow.
There was also, we heard about, witches and warlocks in the woods too. And at some point we tried to chase a witch for like 2 weeks trying to know who she was, remember? Mm-hmm. Because they said they consult with the witch and find out what the conditions are that are right for hunting truffles.
I mean, the interesting thing we learned from the water diviners is that, according to our water diviner friends, there's 2 types of energy that kind of flow through the world. And there's this kind of positive energy, which is the water that they normally find. And then there's this other current of energy, this sort of negative current. And that's where you find truffles, and that's where that pigs are attracted to it. And so, there's this whole world of kind of darkness and night that truffles are associated with. And that was kind of another element of the story that made it so attractive to us this element of mystery, this magic that only certain people had the knowledge to uncover.
And also, I want to add one thing. Also, the charts that they're carrying, that Greg was referring to, they don't leave them out of their sight. They go to the market with those charts. They go to the bar with the charts. They read the newspaper charts. They go home. They do not leave. They carry folders under their arms and not leave them alone.
Please inform our listeners about how much one of these truffles might fetch at auction or just in the private black market.
At the auction that's in the film, that truffle sold for $100,000 for one truffle.
So really, you have people who their entire career, their livelihood is sneaking out in the middle of the night and rooting around through the dirt to find potentially the $100,000 truffle and sell it. And
well, you think, but it doesn't mean that the truffle hunter is actually the person getting $100,000. As you see in the film, we have truffle dealers, who are the middlemen, and
they're the ones who get the $100,000.
Yeah, and they control the market, and the market shifts. We don't know how it shifts or who controls it. There's like 3 people. Everybody in the film controls the market of a truffle. It changes like every hour. It's how many truffles they found in the morning and what the demand was like in the afternoon.
It's one of the most beautiful documentaries I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of documentaries, and it is stunningly beautiful. And I know you used a lot of natural light. Natural light was your friend. And I have to imagine that setting up any sort of lights with these people in secret was a complete non-starter. You had to be fly on the wall. You had to build their trust, and you had to set something up that probably seemed as inobtrusive as possible to do what you wanted to do. What did you use to capture capture these images that met all these criteria? That I know some of it you strapped up, an action cam onto a dog's head, which let me tell you is so much fun. It's so much fun but for the primary portion of the movie, what sort of camera setup and lens setup were you using?
I mean, the secret starts off with spending a ton of time with the people we're filming, and on most days we would film, a single shot. That's after spending a lot of time shooting nothing with the people who were filming, and we spent a lot of time to figure out exactly where we wanted to put the camera in a way that would capture whoever we wanted to capture and allow them to sort of forget about the camera, and also capture all these beautiful material elements of their lives that we were filming, whether it be in the forest or their home. They're figuring out a way to bring the audience, create a frame that would bring the audience into this moment the way that we experienced it, and give them the same feeling that we felt. And it did require, there was actually probably more, I would say there's probably more lighting and more work done to shape the light than it might appear at first.
Light shaping, I'm sure. But I didn't think you were setting up 10Ks or...
No, most of what we were doing was blocking light. We
Yes.
had a lot of floppy. We had a van, a little blue, it was a big blue van that the two of us, I'm driving and he's co-piloting, and it's just us. And we have 16 giant floppies in the back. We have all of our lights back there, like a ton of C-stands. And but we spent a lot of time just blocking light. A lot of time our sound guy was carrying C-stands for us too. But we also, that's another reason why the film is deep focus. We chose that because so you could observe and slow down. And that's what they wanted us to do without saying anything. They would make us sit and wait.
You have wonderful wide shots too of people tromping through through the brush and through these incredible scenics. Some of them, like mist in the air, early morning type of stuff is what it looks like. And
we wait for that. I mean, that took like Greg was saying, a lot of days we just sat and didn't shoot. We'd sit in the van and wait. We'd get up at probably 5:30 in the morning and be back at like 2 o'clock in the morning and just waiting for shots.
We spent hours driving through this area. We spent hours in conversation about, in that time we were talking about the story and how we could best capture it. And we also, we spent hours just looking for the right, when we were shooting exteriors, looking for the right place to film. Sometimes that meant walking through the woods and looking through the forest, but a lot of the shots, sometimes we would be driving through the countryside looking for a place that felt like a storybook, and we'd find it, and then we would have to wait for the light to be right, and then we would come back to that place, and sometimes the light wasn't right, we'd still have to come back.
So
we never shot in sunlight. We never shot in sunlight.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's not a lot of sunlight in this movie. But there is sunlight that you see, or daylight, I should say. Daylight more likely coming in through windows in particular. You see a lot of that. So when you found these locations and you found the right time and the situation was perfect, was there then a shuttling of cast of your subjects, or did it also happen to be the exact places they had to tromp through in order to get to where they were going?
We always went to where the characters lived. We went to their communities, and
you didn't have to stage any of
them. But they don't like to leave their village. I mean, even if they were, it's just as an example, if somebody lived in a village 5 miles outside of Alba, which is considered a town, most of them had never been there. They just go, they're self-sufficient, they have their farmers, they just go to the market once a week in the street markets, and they just get meat mostly. And that was also our calling card with our Truffle Hunters, and because it was very hard for us to establish real relationships with them, but then we realized we live above a butcher, we're going to bring 20 pounds of sausage and salamis and wine, and that kind of helped kind of break the ice. They knew we were the food guys. They grow a lot of their food, and they're used to a very specific diet. So like one day we went to a normal supermarket and got cut chicken, the kind of chicken that most of us eat on a daily basis.
Take for granted.
And they said that they wouldn't eat it.
They wouldn't eat it.
And they will only, they call it, the translation is, I guess, chicken from the land. And it's only chickens that are actually grazed outside. And it's a totally different kind of meat.
Yellow.
And they're yellow, and they're, they just don't have that kind of crazy unnatural plumpness that most of the chicken that we eat. But they won't touch food that comes from a normal, what we consider a normal supermarket.
Can't really blame them, actually, though. I mean, it's like they certainly know something.
Yeah,
so.
But the chicken is, the head, the feet, the whole, everything.
It's the whole bird.
And they eat every single part of it. They put it all in a pot and cook it.
All right, so deep focus techniques. We're working with natural light and shaping the light with flags.
And sometimes we were lighting, though. There are some scenes where we had sky panels. Everything is, if we did light, I don't think there's a single scene that we lit with more than one light.
No, never.
But we traveled with 2 sky panels and a Kinoflow.
That's it.
And what size of camera was this? Was it a small?
It was an
camera?
Arri. No, it was an Arri. It's an Alexa Mini.
Alexa Mini. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And
Kept it pretty
ingenues,
stripped down with ingenue zooms.
Well, it's not stripped down when you have to put all the sound inputs into it. It's really
yes, of course.
And rails.
You're recording single system sound into the camera. So,
we had, and they were recording external also. But and then we had an ingenue 16 to 40 millimeter zoom lens that was kind of like always on the camera, and we occasionally had the big zoom 25 to 250 for the longer zoom shots.
I was wondering about that. I knew you.
We were on a cliff.
You had a really great looking movie too. But I also figured like you had to be incredibly versatile. And then of course, and I knew you mixed formats when I saw the dog, but I didn't know if you were like, hey, we're using this sort of like smaller camera for this, we're using this bigger camera for this.
No.
It
was always that. And then with the doggy-cams, we took us 2 months to develop that harness. I mean, we had welders working with back harnesses with gimbals that didn't made him sick.
Yes, of course. So it's a gimbalized.
Yeah, we tried.
We
tried because we thought the Sony picture was actually a better picture for us, but it didn't have an internal stabilizer. So we ended up going to the GoPro.
Oh, okay.
And that has stabilizer.
There was a Sony that had it, but I don't want to get in the weeds here. But I will tell you that the moment of when the dog shakes his head back and forth.
It's great.
It's so wonderful. I mean, not to mention everything that sequence leading up to it is great. And we haven't really talked about in this interview at all the dogs.
Yes.
The dogs end up becoming a central character in the story, and one of the big. And I'm not going to give away too much of a plot device here, but there's some controversy with the dogs. At least some of the people that are trying to protect their turf, and so they take countermeasures. They are aggressively attacking via the use of poison these dogs.
Yeah.
So talk about sort of this other character in the movie, these dogs, and I'll tell you, it brings a lot of heart to the story. There were people in the audience I know hanging on every single dog moment in there. So tell me about that.
I mean, when we started making the film, we knew that the dogs were important to what the Truffle Hunters do. But the more time we spent with the people that we were filming with, we realized that they weren't just working companions. They had these really profoundly deep relationships with their dogs, and they shared meals with them. I mean, they spend more time with their dogs than they spend with any other human being on Earth. By far, they're out alone in the middle of the woods sometimes for 12 hours alone with their dogs. Mm-hmm. So they've developed these bonds, and in a lot of cases, what we discovered as we were filming, as we were listening to the microphones that we would put on the dogs, that when they went into the woods, we discovered that the Truffle Hunters, they have a secret language for the dogs. They all have. At first, we thought they were speaking dialect, And then we would talk to our translator and said, no, these words don't mean anything in Italian. They don't mean anything in Piemontese dialect. They have their own language that they speak with dogs. So through that, we realized, well, okay, they're characters in the story. And we realized how important they were when their names came up on the screen today and everybody just stood up and started clapping. But we wanted to not only show the relationship that the Truffles had with them and experience the dog from the Truffle Hunters' point of view, but we wanted to bring the audience into their point of view, and that's where the dog cam idea came from. It's like, how are we going to make the audience feel like they're the dog?
So we lived right near a cobbler in Italy, in Alba, who was very patient with us to try to develop these harnesses for the dogs. It really took us 2 months to finally figure it out, because the dogs have different shaped heads, and also we wanted to show the nose at certain points. So the harnesses were a combination of leather sometimes, and we had to work with a sheet metal person to get a piece of flexible metal. We had to work with rubber people and vinyl people and riveters, but everybody in that town, they're craftspeople. So for us, it was like a pleasure to go to somebody and say, well, I'm drawing a picture of the profile of the dog's head. Can you match something and get the ears to fit through? But Greg was saying before about microphones. I mean, we were very conscious of sound throughout this entire process. So we did have a little pack and microphones on the dogs' noses, separate. And also, they didn't want us going with them in the woods, obviously. So that was another reason why we had the cameras in the dogs' heads, so we could see the secret spots and see actually how they were interacting. Like we see Sergio going, we thought it was a horse in the woods. We never saw him in the camera. And finally, the dog turns and we're like, it's him. That's his language.
Yeah.
We didn't do that in public.
Okay, so one final question, really, I wanted to ask you. There's a shot where one of your subjects comes out through a window. Mm-hmm. How did you know that he was going to be coming through that window at that time to get ready to have that shot? Because it's a wonderful moment. I'm not going to say anything else about it. I don't want to give it away, but it's a great moment for your story.
Well, Maria, it's Carlo and Maria. We always ask Maria, how come Carlos is always able to run away and you can't ever find him? And we talked about at night that she faces the wall and he faces Tatina, where he's outside the door. And, we were waiting one night. We'd wait there and wait, and nothing happened. And we came back another night, and we waited. And then there was a door. To the left, we were by the door waiting, and we heard, and it was the window. So we ran the camera over to the window, and the shot was actually crooked. We corrected it in post because we had to plant the tripod down so fast, and then because we knew Tatina was barking, and we knew he was coming through the door, we thought. And then it was, he came out.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the show. It was really a pleasure. Where can people find you? Are you on any of the social-y things? Do you Instagram or any of that stuff? or is there a website for the movie that you'd like to?
We have an Instagram for Truffle Hunters. Yeah. We do. And we have a Twitter, but nothing's on it yet. Yeah, we posted one thing about the Sundance premiere, but we will be better with that.
We finished the film
Friday.
Yeah, we literally just finished the film. We were in the mix right up until the last moment. So
wow.
So we're a little behind on some of that stuff, but it should all be up and running soon.
Gentlemen, thanks again for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been the Cinematography Podcast, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory on the web at hotrodcameras.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.